On today's show, we're sitting down with Greg Golson, a former big leaguer, and we're talking some baseball, but we're getting into his mind as well.
Welcome to another episode of the Baseball Awakening Podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered, unsexy side of player development. Get ready for some knowledge bombs with your host, Geoff Rottmayer.
Welcome to the Baseball Awakening Podcast. I'm Geoff Rottmayer. Today we're sitting down with former first rounder and big leaguer Greg Golson. Greg played for the Philadelphia Phillies, the Texas Rangers, and the New York Yankees. Greg, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Listen, you are a guy who got drafted in the first round, and you got to play in the big league. You know, something a small handful of guys have got to do. But we appreciate you coming on and you know, just kind of learning about, you know, the process that you went through to make it to the big league. But let's just kind of start with you talking about your journey, and then I'd like to kind of get into your mind about base running, outfielding, and some hitting.
Well, you know, I grew up in Austin, Texas, and, you know, it's a really good baseball culture right down there, and it's getting bigger right now. They got some huge perfect game facility, or complex that they're building out in Hutto or Round Rock. So, you know, growing up in Texas, you can play baseball pretty much year round, and I had a late start playing. I think I started playing at 9 years old, but the first time I hit a baseball and I saw it kind of get smaller in the night sky, I was like, "Ooh, I want to do this for a long time." And
Awesome.
my brother played football, my sister played volleyball, and, you know, my sport was baseball, but we were all, you know, really competitive. So I feel like that kind of helped me on the baseball scene, especially getting the late start, you know, just kind of willing my way to success. And, you know, it was kind of crazy. I wasn't always fast. It was like my junior year of high school. It was like I all of a sudden got a lot faster and got a lot stronger. And that was when, you know, a lot of the national attention started coming my way, and I started getting scholarship offers, and they started talking about the draft, and it was a whirlwind. I mean, it seems like it was yesterday, but it seemed like it went by so fast. Like I couldn't even like, I don't know how to explain it. It was so fast and whirlwind and so surreal that, you know, it was all happening, that I look back on it and I'm like, man, that was crazy. But,
Awesome.
You know, looking back on the career now, like I went, you know, playing 16 years and going all over the world to play. Like, it's been awesome so far. I can't wait to see what's next.
Very cool. So let's jump back to your junior year. When I read up about you, a lot of people like your speed and your range and all that stuff. So it wasn't until your junior year that you got stronger and faster. Can you talk about that a little bit? Was there something that you worked on, or was just simply getting stronger what helped you?
Well, I think you know, I didn't really break 100 pounds till like my sophomore year of high school. So I think it was just, you know, me kind of being a late bloomer and just being that really, really skinny kid. And, you know, my brother was 5 years older than me. He played football at the Naval Academy. So, you know, my eighth grade year and freshman year, you know, he was coming home from school and bringing home like supplements and letting me, like, you know, do his workouts and stuff. So I think that had a lot to do with me gaining, you know, so much weight and strength. But I think honestly, it was just me kind of, you know, after my sophomore year, I quit basketball and kind of focused on baseball a little bit more and really started playing it year round, you know, with no distractions. And I think that was kind of what really made me kind of come into my own.
Very cool. So as you progress, with the running speed, did you do anything to kind of improve that? Like, was there a technique that you were trying to study or learn, and how did that whole thing go?
Well, I mean, you know, with doing, you know, the showcases and stuff, you know, just like any test, like you're taking SAT, they have like SAT prep, and you kind of learn how to take the test. A lot of my speed, you know, advancements had to do with me just working on my running form, really. And, you know, so many people just assume that, you know, if you're fast, you're fast. You don't have to work on it. And if you're slow, you're slow. There's no use in working on it. So, you know, I forgot who it was. It was one of my coaches that said, "You're fast, but think about how much faster you would be if you actually worked on it." And that that was something that kind of caught my attention. So I really wanted to make speed one of my carrying tools, and honestly, it worked out. I got a lot of national attention running from home to first and running 60s and 40s. So a lot of it just had to do with me learning how to run properly, especially in a test setting where you run a 60, you run 60 yards, and how often does that happen in a baseball game, running a straight line. So I think some of the tests that show speed don't really show applicable game usable speed, but if you can do the test the right way, then who's going to blame you?
Right. No, the speed tool is something that I talk to about guys a lot. If you guys can develop that, there's a need for that because it seems to be kind of a lost art with the big power tools nowadays. So I think speed tools it's huge if a guy can develop that.
For sure.
So with that, you said something that I want to talk into about more is having the tool and then having playable tools, two different things. So being fast doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna make all the plays in the outfield, steal all the bases and all that stuff. So let's start with on the base path. What's going through your mind? How do we become a better base runner?
That's a good question. A lot of it has to do with just, knowing the situation and, knowing the batter, knowing, what pitches have come, recently, knowing the runner's arms. Cause, there's two base coaches out there, but, if you know your own speed, you should be able to, send yourself and hold yourself up, cause you've been playing the game for a while. So, I think a lot of being a good base runner is just, paying attention and not thinking that, oh, I'm on base, I can just, kind of relax. Because you see it all the time. Guys get on base and they're, having a full conversation with a guy, even as they're leading off, laughing and joking around. And, you wouldn't do that when you're hitting. And you wouldn't do that when you're pitching. You wouldn't do that when you're playing defense. So, and a lot of times that's the first base, first basemen are known for talking to base dealers, in a friendly, joking way to get them kind of distracted and not focused on stealing bases, and I remember later in my career, I just go along and play with it, act like I'm talking and then just take off mid-sentence.
Yeah. So what were some of the things, and you mentioned a couple of situation counts, stuff like that. What other things are you paying attention to while you're sitting there at the base, or maybe even when you're in the dugout prior to getting on base?
Kind of what the pitcher, his body language and how he's handling runners without, how he's handling the game without runners on base and how he's handling them with. A lot of guys can't really pitch with runners on base. They're dealing, and then somebody gets on base and they can't pitch out of the stretch, for whatever reason. So a lot of times it's, first trying to see, what their tendencies are and what kind of makes them tick or annoyed. And then after that, it's, if I'm going to steal a base, I want to know, a lot of times people that are talking about base stealers, they always talk about, what to look for, if a pitcher is going to pick. Well, honestly, I don't care if he's going to pick. I can get back. I'm more worried about when he's going to the plate. I don't need to know when to go back. I'm only 10 feet from the base at max.
Right.
I'm trying to go another 80 feet. So I want to know what he does to go. Sometimes, it has to do with looks. It's crazy. I when I was with the Yankees, I spent a lot of time in the video room just kind of trying to pick up tendencies and things that pitchers do. And it's crazy. One of the things I found was, when a catcher puts a pick on, or, the manager, or whoever puts it on and gives the sign to the pitcher, a lot of times, and I'm giving away trade secrets here, but sorry. A lot of times when the whatever the pitcher looks at first, that's what he's going to throw at. So I'm leaning in, getting the sign from the catcher. If the catcher puts on a pick, I'm probably going to come set, but as I'm coming set, I'm going to pick up my target at first base. And then I'll check home plate. And the opposite goes true if, he puts down a fastball or whatever. I'm going to pick up my target first, and then I'm going to check, first base. So a lot of times, subconsciously, pitchers do things that kind of tell you what they're going to do. And it blew my mind how many guys did this.
Really?
Like at the big league level too. Like whatever they look at first, it's probably what they're going to throw at. And of course, guys are going to change it if they hear this, but I think a lot of it just has to do with paying attention. Something DJ LeMahieu told me was awesome when I was with the Rockies. He goes, "You see a pitcher shake twice, more than likely he's not going to pick off because he's worried about the hitter." So it's those things that kind of come with experience where you're like, you know what, I'm noticing this tendency. A lot of times, guys have their own personal things that help them steal bases, and it's like you never really know, but 5 to 10 extra stolen bases a year, it can be a lot. That can win some ball games.
Right. Wow, that that's awesome. So when you start talking about that, I remember having a conversation with a few people, and they keep saying that that's too much. That you're thinking about too much, and not really. I mean, all that is information to help you be a better base runner.
Yeah, I mean, if they always say it in the minor leagues, and when you get drafted, they say for the most part everybody's tools are pretty around human level. You've got your freaks like Trout and guys that can do everything, but for the most part, everyone has the same amount of ability overall. But what the separator is the mental. And if you're not paying attention to what the game's giving you, then how do you expect to be able to use your mental to, get an edge?
Right. So whenever you're there and, you got a pitcher who you're really, really successful off of, and he's getting a little, nervous up there. How do you use that to your advantage as a base runner?
I mean, I know a lot of times if the pitcher's got like a really quick move to the plate or quick feet and can pick you off, a lot of times base runners don't realize that they do just as much disruption by just being on base. So, whenever I could tell a pitcher was really paying attention to me on base, I would just shut it down, because if he's focusing on me, that's a little bit less focus that he has on the hitter. And, that sinker gets a little flatter, or that curveball hangs a little bit, or he gets a little bit more of the plate on his fastball because he's trying to be quick to the plate. A lot of times, as a base runner, your goal is to score, so if you can score from first, why risk it and, possibly, change the game in a way that, isn't really beneficial for the team. Like I've seen a lot of guys try to get their numbers up stealing bases, and the guys that hit behind them end up hating it because, either they're running in the bad times or, it's a hitter's count and, it messes up their focus. Because some hitters don't like when, some hitters don't like when base runners are jumping around on the bases, causing a distraction because it just ends up messing with their field of vision, especially at second base. You're already in scoring position. So, a lot of times it's just knowing the game situation and trying to figure out how you can best fit into it without, making it all about you. Of course, there's guys who get on base and, they just disrupt it just because that's the nature they have. But if there's a hitter up that is, an RBI guy, you kind of want to let that guy swing. If not, get to a scoring position and then shut it down so that he can swing.
I was just going to ask that, how the batter impact what you do on the base path, the type of hitter that he is.
I think if, you gotta understand, like a lot of times I would get stolen bases when the hitter had an 0-2 count because, especially two outs. If he gets to 2 strikes, more than likely he's going to be a little bit more defensive. So, as a base runner, he's probably not going to put something in the gap that would allow you to steal. So if I'm at first, or allow you to score, what I'm saying is, so, if if he comes up and, it's a 0-2 count to end the inning, I'd rather have him leading off the inning with a fresh count, as opposed to trying to battle and put something in play and then we lose the base runner and the hitter. So I think it's, depending on the hitter, a lot of times, like, for instance, say a guy's up that struggles with breaking balls. Well, they probably have you hitting in front of them or you probably have a speed guy hitting in front of them because, when he's on base, the guy that gets breaking balls will probably get more fastballs. But if you're watching the at bat on base, if the pitcher throws, 2 or 3 straight fastballs and the pitcher's tendencies, more than likely one of those next couple of pitches is going to be a breaking ball, and that's a good time to run on. So paying attention to, a lot of, like, there's so many subtle things, like how the catcher sets up, where the infielders are positioned, what the count was. There's so many things that can kind of help you get an edge and kind of feel like you have a little bit more confidence when you make a decision or decide to go.
Very cool. And then with that, you got to pay attention. That's the name of the game, paying attention. Whenever you throw that, when you get into that position, you're able to have some success and help the team win. So when you're, let's say, when you're on the base, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the feet, or what are you looking at? I know everybody's different, but what did you look at?
Well, at the beginning of my career, I would always look at, their shoulders, or I would have a hard focus on their body. After, watching them, all right, this is this guy's tail. This is what he does. But as I got older, I started seeing that having such a hard focus on one thing, you kind of lose sight of, the person as a whole, like the whole image of them. And a lot of times their body language gives away when they're about to go. So instead of looking at one specific thing, I would just kind of have a soft general focus looking at him in general, and, over the years, watching so many guys go to the plate, you can just kind of, I don't know if it's a hunch or if you actually see something, but you just kind of have that feeling of, okay, he's about to go to the plate, and I feel like that's the thing that's kind of separated me. Once I realized that, it was like I didn't have to focus on, his foot or that. Sometimes you have to do that when the guy's got a really good move. The lefty's got like a balk move or something. And in that situation, I want to know when he's going to come pick, because most of those guys you don't really want to run on anyway because it's an out. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Is I don't really want to look at one specific thing, but I'll just kind of take in his whole, the whole scene and see what's going on and have a better read of what's going on.
Cool. So are you watching the baseball in flight when he releases it, or where do you go from there?
So when he comes set, I'm kind of just kind of looking at his numbers, but looking everywhere, I guess. It's hard to kind of explain what I mean, but just kind of looking everywhere. And then, once he makes his move, say it's a righty, and he lifts his foot and he's going to the plate, then I'll, take my first couple steps and then I'll peek to see if, if he did deliver the ball. Usually they did if it's a righty, but I'll peek in and see, if he's there, if the catcher's got a good, pitch, or if the hitter makes contact, but for the most part, once I see movement, I'm not really trying to hesitate and make sure. I'm just going, like once I see movement and I think he's going to the plate, any form of hesitation will probably make you lose a half step.
Yeah. So what about when you're not stealing? What are you watching after the ball gets delivered?
Just kind of the hitting zone. Like, you want to watch flight in case, there's a, dirt ball, you can read it all the time. Yeah. You advance on a dirt ball, that's huge. You do that 10 times in the season, and that probably results in 8 runs. You know what I mean? Because you don't have to give up an out. You don't have to swing the bat. You're just advancing on the play, and it's huge. I don't think enough teams do it because they don't realize how hard it is for the catcher to block it, find the ball, pick it up, and then throw it on the move. It's hard for them to do that. So, I'd say just, what was the question again? I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
What are you looking for, or when you're not running the base, when you're not stealing,
Okay.
are you looking at the ball in flight, or what are you looking at the hitting zone?
Yeah, just kind of trying to advance without, like, if you're not stealing, you want to try to advance without stealing, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
just because you're not stealing doesn't mean, okay, I'm going to be here for the rest of the inning until someone hits it. Like,
Yeah.
it could be, the pitcher and catcher forget to call time or something, or whatever it is, be opportunistic so that, you look like the smart ball player, especially when you have speed or when you don't have speed. Being opportunistic is probably the best way to make yourself more valuable to the team by
Right.
just, being a slow guy that can advance a base, because they don't expect it.
Right.
But, if I'm not stealing, a lot of times I'm trying to, in my mind, I'm trying to figure out something about, this pitcher or this catcher, something that they do so that the next time I'm up or the next time I'm on base, I have experience with this particular pitcher and I can kind of have a better read.
Cool. So what about the catcher? Does that play a role in your mind at all? At who's behind the plate?
Very little. I mean, you steal on the pitcher for the most part. If the pitcher's quick to the plate, you're probably not going to steal on them. Some catchers have ridiculous arms and can backpick, so you have to be aware of that. Or, they like to call a lot of fastballs when runners are on base, so it's kind of one of those things where, you got to know your opponent because it gives you a really good feel on, what the game plan should be. Like, I remember there was one catcher, and I won't say his name, but he was super lazy. And, if he wasn't getting it, if he wasn't hitting, he was even worse. So it was like, you kind of had to know how he was doing offensively. And if he wasn't doing well offensively, then go ahead and get to the races because, he was a prospect that didn't really need to be defensively inclined.
Cool. So, in the day of the latest news of the Houston Astros, when you're on second base, are you trying to steal signs, or are you trying to look in, or what's your goal? I mean, obviously the goal is to get home, but in terms of trying to figure out what the pitch is coming and helping the hitter, does that come in your mind at all?
I mean, there are a couple times in my career where the teams that I'd been on, we would have some way to relay the signs if the signs were obvious. Like, of course, that's a part of the game. If the team's not going to be smart enough to have deceptive or signs that you can't crack, then that's their fault.
Right.
But, there were times when, we would, give location, like the catcher would set up early. That's the catcher's fault if he sets up early, and if you know the location, for the most part, you kind of know what the pitch is going to be. They're not throwing any breaking balls in. So when the guy sets up in, the guy at second would kind of hop off to, let the hitter know what direction the catcher went. And it's so hard to tell because the guy's just getting a secondary, right?
Right.
So it's like, there's ways to do it the right way, if I can say cheating the right way. But,
right.
Like, that's just a part of the game. Like, if a pitcher's tipping his pitches, it's his, the burden's on him to figure out that he's doing it. It's not on me to tell him that he's tipping it for the good of the game.
Yeah. So you mentioned it earlier, the positioning of the defense. Let's say when you're on second base, and what are you looking for? What positioning are you looking for, and how much does that really play a role in your decision to do X?
On the bases?
Yes.
I mean, it's a lot of times guys will, like, for instance, a 3-0 count. I think the 3-0 count is the most missed opportunity in baseball, because you watch a big league game, when a 3-0 count happens, most of the infielders are on their heels or their hands are on their knees. Mm-hmm. I've seen guys in a full squat in the infield because they knew the hitter wasn't going to swing. Yeah. And I've seen, I've probably, in my career, I've probably stolen second or third, or usually second, probably 40 times on a 3-0 count because, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
It's like you end up on first. If you end up on second, it's a 3-1 count with a runner in scoring position, or it's a walk and it doesn't hurt anybody. The catcher is going to probably hold anything close to get the call, and the pitcher is probably not going to pick. So it's kind of like, the defense, a lot of times in base running, it's more about catching the defense off guard than it is, just being faster or more explosive than they are. I know, like, for instance, when I'm at second, I remember I was in Mexico, and I hated it that, I was the leadoff hitter, and say I hit a double, or I hit a single, and the next guy comes up and he walks. So it'd be first and second, no outs in the first inning, and the manager would put on a bunt. And to me, with a 3-hole hitter, that's just not how you draw it up, putting a bunt on with one of your better hitters, Right. So this happened like 4 games in a row. So on the 4th game, when the guy squared around, I was at second. I took off for third, and because the third baseman was crashing, I basically walked into third, and the hitter ended up being able to hit and drive in those 2 runs.
Nice.
It's kind of just more like, how can I, catch them off guard, depending on their positioning. Like sometimes when a third baseman is super shifted over for the lefty, I mean, you're probably closer to the third base than the third baseman is.
Yeah.
In that situation, especially if he's got to wait for the pitch to cross the plate. So again, it's just paying attention, man. Like that's probably the biggest thing with base running.
Right. No, I agree with you. So cool. So thanks for sharing that. So let's move you to the outfield. I read somewhere that you got better after you got hurt. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, as a speed guy, it was kind of like I felt like you can never have enough speed, and that being my carrying tool, it was like, oh, the ball's in there, I'm gonna run as fast as I can, Oh man, my dog's about to start barking. The UPS man just pulled up, and I know he's about to go crazy. but
it's all right.
It's once I got hurt, but not hurt enough to lose any time. I still wanted to play. It was kind of like I had to plan out my jumps or everything a little bit better so that I was more efficient. Like it's kind of like not having if you're right-handed dominant, like not having your right hand for a week. You learn that you can do stuff left-handed a little bit better just by adapting. So when I was, I think it was like a calf or something like that. I just couldn't get to that second gear or that extra gear that, a lot of sprinters have. So I had to really just be more efficient with my routes. When I was hitting, I stopped running out of the box before the swing, was over. There were just a lot of things that allowed other aspects of my game to just get better. And then I was more able to incorporate the speed into my game once I was healthy. So it was interesting, kind of handicapping me, allowed me to get better. You see it a lot with pitchers. A lot of times organizations will take away their best pitch to develop another one.
Oh.
They won't let them throw their changeup for the whole year because they want them to develop a slider. And, that's kind of how I did it without really knowing I did it that way.
Right. So was that something that you kind of figured out on your own, or did you go to, hey, dude, I'm hurting a little bit, and what can I do better? Did someone kind of help you with that, or how did that process work?
Not really. I mean, getting old is a humbling experience.
Yeah.
Like especially in baseball when they just keep getting younger. It was kind of just like a thing that, I was new to the team, and if I were to go in and tell the trainers that I was hurt, probably wasn't going to make that team. So, a little bit of motivation and inspiration helped as well. But I think, it really did help in that I was, I played a little deeper or, I ran with my head up a little more on the bases, so I was able to make better decisions. It was kind of like the difference between, I felt like my 100% was good, but I was actually doing too much. I was going 120%, I don't know how to explain it, mathematically, realistically, I guess, but
Right.
I was doing too much. I was doing more than I needed to do. And, taking it away just kind of allowed me to see that, oh, I'm still a valuable baseball player without my speed.
So when you're out there in the outfield, and you played all three positions, what obviously paying attention to the game is important out there as well. But what would your normal positioning, and what would your thought process in your decision making, and how are you going to position guys?
A lot of times their swings told me. I mean, obviously, if you're facing a guy that you've seen for a while, you know his tendencies, and you're gonna be prepared for him when he comes up. But if you see that this particular hitter's not really seeing this pitcher well, you kind of, adjust. Especially in center field, you have the best view. You see where the pitch is crossing the plate and how the hitter's reacting. You see how they're swinging, how their like hips and shoulders are opening up. You see how their hands are working. So as a center fielder, that's why they kind of put the center fielder in charge of, positioning everybody. Is, you're in the game and you see, okay, this guy's not picking up, such and such's fastball very well. So I'm going to move the pull side outfielder towards the opposite field gap, or, this guy, he's always tried to hit the ball in the opposite field gap. So I'm going to pinch that gap. Or, sometimes hitters, they change their approach completely when they get to two strikes. And, a lot of times, here's one thing that I did my whole career is I would ask pitchers, where do they typically get hit the hardest? Like, do you usually get hit pull side, or do you get hit, line drives up the middle? Do you usually, would you rather me play deep or shallow? And a lot of times that's like your best positioning, because a pitcher knows,
Right.
every time I throw my changeup and it gets flat, the guy, they end up hitting it to left field. And knowing that's huge for a center fielder, because when you take away hard hit balls, I mean, that's a huge game changer for the team and the pitcher.
Right. Wow. So what are you looking at when you're out there? Like you're looking at the hitting zone, but you're also seeing everything. Though it's kind of the same concept when you're on the base. You're seeing everything, and you see everything almost. That type of concept. That same way out there. Would you explain it that way?
Yeah, I mean, before every pitch, I try to look at my the people who are near me. So the shortstop. If I'm in center, the shortstop, second base, left field, right field, and kind of know where the wall and the track is. I wanted to know all that because, you're used to it and you kind of get accustomed to where everyone plays and everyone's abilities. But, sometimes a guy might see something and make a snap decision to change during the middle of a pitch. And if you don't know where he's at, that could cause a collision. A lot of stuff on defense is more related to just being safe, keeping yourself healthy, especially in the outfield, because you're running full speed. So, it's just kind of being aware of your surroundings. And, in the outfield, when you don't have anything to do, you still have something to do, go back up a base, even if, the throw's coming from a different direction, just be there in case, because you don't want to be the guy that wasn't there, even though you probably didn't have to be there. It's going to be, you're the last line of defense as an outfielder. So you always got to be running. So it's kind of like an outfielder, you're just getting your conditioning in, if anything.
Yeah. So let's just say a routine fly ball. What's the general rule of thumb of how to track that, how to pick it up, how to field it, and catch it and all that stuff? What would be kind of the basics?
Well, I mean, as a player, I would say just catch it.
Right.
If you do that,
Yeah.
no one's going to have a problem with you. But, I like to get behind the ball. You never really know when the base runner is going to try you. So if you set yourself up to be ready, a lot of times they'll shut it down. I think if I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of things that go on during the course of a game, but if you don't, that's a tough question, man. But I'd say it's like if a ball goes up, the number one priority is just making sure you have it. Like somebody call it so that it can get caught, and that's probably the number one thing that needs to happen. Is just somebody take charge, and then after that, just put yourself in a position to not be surprised once you do catch it. Like you have the ball in your hand as an outfielder. The longer you have it, the more people start yelling at you. Get it in.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, just know where the ball is going to go. Before it's even put in play, just have your scenarios in your mind, and once it happens, it'll just kind of happen.
Cool. So, when you're out there, the game's pretty still. The mind's going to wander a little bit, which isn't good because that's when the ball finds you. But how do you work through that? Like what were kind of some tricks that you did?
To just stay focused, stay in the game. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. How do you stay present in the whole game?
Well, I love baseball. That's not hard for me. Especially playing in the outfield at a young age, it was like I knew that if you can pay attention as an outfielder at a young age, then you're probably never going to have trouble, paying attention. But a lot of times I just tried to, especially in center field, I tried to, think along with the pitcher and catcher and try to, know what pitch is coming. Just because, when I get back to the dugout, it really showed the pitcher that I was in the game, when I would be like, man, that, 2-1 slider that you threw to that first hitter was nasty. You say something like that and the pitcher almost, gets life, because they're like, oh, somebody else saw it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, doing stuff like that kind of helps, but also being able to separate, the three different facets of the game, defense, base running, and hitting, being able to separate them and know that you can contribute, in one, if the other isn't, working, say you're in a slump, you can still, take away runs on defense or cause runs on the bases.
Yeah. Very cool. Let's jump over to hitting.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on hitting? There's a ton of things out there these days. Ton of different beliefs. And I don't think any of it is wrong. It just depends on, what you think you want to do. But what are your thoughts on, let's just start with the swing. What are your thoughts on the swing and what should happen?
Well, to me, I think, the attempts to like crystallize the perfect swing are all in vain. There is no perfect swing, like the metrics, and all the tech that's out right now. I feel like it's difficult because obviously, a good swing has things that indicate it was good via data, via the metrics. So this, the launch angle was this, the exit velocity was this. So that's what you want to quote unquote strive for. But I think that the problem now is that a lot of people are chasing the metrics and not, the result. I was talking with, one of the hitting guys that I always talk to, and, there's a difference between swinging and hitting.
Right.
I say this all the time because I did it quite a bit, but you can have a perfect swing, quote unquote, perfect swing, and still swing at a slider in the dirt. You're not hitting. You just have a pretty swing that, looks good in BP, but if you can't put together a plan to hit, then you're not going to be successful. And you're going to keep dumping money into, the sources that say, oh, this is the way to swing though. It requires that, kids understand who they are and what type of player they're going to be and how they can be valuable to the team. Like it doesn't make sense for a 5'6", senior in high school to try to swing like Aaron Judge.
Right.
Like those two body types are different. Like there's a way that 5'6" senior can be in a lineup, but my guess is it isn't going to be as a power hitter.
Right.
It requires people to self-evaluate and come up with a game plan and then just compete. Like it was earlier in my career and I was with the Rangers and I remember I was thinking too much. I was in the box trying to do this, trying to do that, and striking out a bunch because I wasn't, athletically free because I was thinking too much. And I remember Scott Service, he pulled me in his office and was like, "Hey, look, I want you to, stop worrying about all this stuff and just compete." And when he said it, it kind of made me mad because I was like, "What do you mean compete? I'm competing every day." I took it the wrong way.
Yeah.
But, as when I got older, I understood what he meant, and I implemented it in that, for instance, like if you were going to face, and I'm not, knocking your baseball talent, but if you were going to face Nolan Ryan or, one of the greatest pitchers that ever lived, it's pretty hard to get a hit off of him. We can agree to that.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're not going to swing. You know what I mean? Like you're still going to swing the bat. So, at some point, each player has to be like, all right, I'm good enough. I belong on this field. This is why. And it's not, my exit velocity isn't good enough. I need to get that better. You can hit a soft 340 and be a really good hitter. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just think, the hitting atmosphere right now is way too, they're trying to cookie cut, and industrialize it to produce the same. But I feel like variance is what makes baseball good.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this hitter. Look at Euclid has that weird stance and he still hits. Like I feel like everyone is trying to be the same hitter, and I don't think it's good for the game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think we need to focus more on hitting and let guys kind of figure themselves out. But with that, you talked about the hitter getting to know themselves. How does that process work? Like, how long did it take for you to figure out what kind of a hitter that you were?
Well, a lot of it's just trial and error. Like you try to go deep on a 2-0 pitch and it doesn't get to the warning track. You find out pretty quick what type of hitter you are. So like that, a lot of it just, if you don't learn what type of player you are, then you end up not being a player. They get rid of you because you're inconsistent. So a lot of it just has to do with knowing what you can do and trying to do that as consistently as possible. Because, I said this in a thing that I wrote a couple of weeks ago. Like, as you get to the next level, they don't get better; they just get more consistent.
Yeah. The other thing that you said that I really liked, and I talk about it a lot, but there's not a lot of people doing it, is the self-evaluation part. So, can you talk a little bit about maybe when that happened? I think it should happen after every game. You should at least have to have some type of thought process of what just happened so that you can get better every day. But can you talk a little bit about the self-evaluation process and kind of what are the things you were thinking about or doing?
Well, I mean, it started with me pretty early, and it was my rookie ball year. And I remember, struggling and getting mad, like the whole show of emotion to show everybody that you're mad that you got out.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is stupid, and, I kind of got away from doing that. And then I remember it was in Oklahoma City. I was in AAA with the Rangers and I was frustrated because I kept hitting the ball to the warning track. And every time I would do it, after the game, a scout or somebody would be like, "Why don't you bunt more?" And that made me so mad because I was like, I know I can bunt. I want to show you that I can hit. And that was just me being stupid and ignorant. But,
right.
I went into the swing room after the guy was at the game. He was like, "All right, I'll be at the game today. Let me show me that you can hit." And I lined out to the warning track in left field 3 times. So I go into the swing room that's behind the dugout, and I just try to take my anger out on, whatever. And I end up, swinging a bat and hitting this hurdle that's in this swing room, like a track hurdle.
Oh,
I end up hitting it, and it, twists my wrist in a weird way, and I end up, tearing a ligament in my wrist.
Oh.
And that was a lesson learned, because I was in AAA knocking on the door of the big league. I had to miss. Well, I mean, actually, I didn't miss any because I tried to play through it. I was swinging one-handed that year in 2009.
Yeah. Huh.
And, my average went down immediately after that. I think I was hitting 290 at the time. And I ended up the year hitting 260, and then they took me off the roster because obviously I didn't hit well, So it's like that lesson allowed me to be more objective in my at-bats. Like if I get out, I ask my question as soon as I'm walking back to the dugout. Okay, why did I get out? And I'd say 80% of the time it was because I didn't execute, or I did something that I shouldn't have done. So, that allows me to immediately, I guess, disconnect from all the emotions that come with it, and I can get better immediately. Okay, I got out because I swung at bad pitches. Or, I got out because I missed my, my pitch on that 2-1 pitch. Once you can take ownership of it, then you can begin to evaluate in a way that allows you to get better.
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk about, we've all been through it, the slumps.
Mm-hmm.
It's never easy. Nobody likes it.
Right.
But you eventually get out of it. It's just a matter of how quick. And you can somewhat, not all the time, you can somewhat maybe have control over that a little bit, just by the attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So, after what you've learned and what you've learned throughout your career, what would be kind of your advice on the guys who are slumping and how do they work through that?
I was talking to one of my lessons about this just yesterday. A lot of times when we slump, we think it's mechanical, but oftentimes it's not mechanical. It's just, are you getting ready on time, or are you seeing the ball? A lot of times it has nothing to do with what you're doing and more to do with what you're not doing. Yeah. And I think, whenever guys get into a slump, a lot of times they immediately go to their hitting coach to see what it is that they're doing wrong. And, a lot of times if the coach isn't, I don't know how to say it, if the coach isn't aware of baseball or isn't experienced, oftentimes they'll go to, you got a loop in your swing, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. And that immediately sends the player into a searching mindset that just perpetuates the struggle even more.
Right.
So I think a lot of times it just requires the player to just take a deep breath and understand that it's not going to last forever. It's not the end of the world. Like the same way when you're in a hot streak and you can't get out, the mistake would be to think, oh, this is me forever now. Yeah. Like you've got to just stay on that. I don't know. You got to stay on that plane, that even keel, because, and I'll tell you this, it was a really influential point in my career when I stopped, aspiring to be something and started just, I guess I just stepped into the reality of what I aspired to be, like instead of thinking I want to be a 300 hitter, I would look myself in the mirror and say, I'm a 300 hitter, and that helped me so much. I can't explain how much it helped me because, in a game when I would be 0 for 2, I'd be running out to the outfield and I'd be like, it's all right, I'm a 300 hitter. I'll probably get a hit this next at bat. Yeah. And that I can't explain to you how like freeing that is, like most of the time, we're self-conscious as ball players because we want to be the best and we feel like we don't stack up. So it's like when you just to yourself, you just say, you know what, I'm a success, or I'm a 300 hitter, or I'm a dominant pitcher, whatever it is that you want to be, just say it. say it that you are now, and I feel like it'll just alleviate all that stress and anxiety that you put on yourself, because you're so results based. You've already obtained the result to yourself, so there's no anxiety anymore.
So, your routine.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with that? Like, what did you find something that worked? How long did it take you to find one that you were able to be consistent with?
Well, I mean, at the lower levels, it's kind of tough to get into a routine. Well, it was when this is like 15 years ago, so I'm kind of dating myself, but it was difficult to get into a routine because a lot of guys just aren't aware of how important it is. So your teammates are just really inconsistent with theirs. So trying to figure out when you can get on a consistent routine without someone else, kind of disrupting it because of their inconsistency is probably the hardest challenge.
Yeah.
And at the lower levels is that, your surroundings you're surrounded by guys that just aren't as, professional as they should be, and that's just by design of the system or the level that they're at. But I think, with that being said, it's kind of like, again, I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
We were talking about routines.
Oh yeah, the routine. So, with that being said, once I got to the higher levels, I just kind of stuck with the drills that made my swing feel good. Like there wasn't a prescribed routine that I did because someone such and such said it was going to help me. Some days I tried to stick to the same routine, but some days whenever, the feel got there a little quicker, I didn't have to complete the drill, like maybe I did high T every day and, finished off by doing, a different T drill. But if I felt good after doing the first T drill, I wouldn't have to do it as much, at the end, just because, it's a long season. You don't want to tire yourself out and get exhausted simply because you're trying to follow a routine that you feel like is more of a good luck charm.
Yeah. What about your approach? How did you, what was kind of your guideline for developing your approach based on the pitcher or whatever?
Well, I mean, it's crazy that I didn't fully understand what an approach was until I was about, I'd say 26, 25. And, it's unfortunate because I feel like I probably would have had a better, time in the big leagues if I had known, what approach was. I had thought that approach was, what you do every time. You ask a high schooler, what's your approach? And I'd say 70% of the time they're going to say, oh, well, hit the ball the opposite field. And that's pretty much what I was. Yeah. And it really makes you easy to pitch to, hard in, soft away. Yeah. So, after struggling with hard in, soft away for, 7 years of my pro career, I had a conversation with a guy about approach, and he was just kind of talking about how it's more than, being stubborn to one approach. It's adapting, from at bat to at bat and sometimes pitch to pitch. If I go up there and I'm like, all right, I'm looking for the ball up so that I can, hit the ball to, left center field because the wind's blowing out. If the pitcher ends up throwing me a fastball that looks like it rises, I'm going to have to step out and take a different approach to that at bat because I would be susceptible to chasing at the high pitch if he has a fastball that rises. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's kind of like you've got to adapt in the moment so that the cat and mouse game isn't so difficult. You got to you're not one step behind. Like there are times when I had an approach going up to the plate, and then I saw by the pitch sequence that he threw me that there was a good chance that he was going to throw me this pitch next. For instance, like a lefty coming up. For the most part, I would try to hit lefties the other way because of the way their ball moves.
Right.
But this particular time, the pitcher went fastball, strike that was like middle end. Didn't swing at it because it was middle end. Next pitch, he goes fastball way in, like way inside. So to me, that tells me, okay, you're a lefty that got ahead with the first strike, and then you move my feet with the second one or the second pitch. More than likely, you're going to go off speed away.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that fastball in set up that off speed. So I step out and, you know, because of the hitter that I am, he's not expecting me to sit on a changeup, especially after he set it up so well. So I sit on the changeup, and he ends up hanging a little bit, and I killed it. Like, I hit it out the park. And, you know, those are the type of things that, you know, that to me, those aren't necessarily approaches that you want to go to all the time, but they're things that, you know, allow you to have a little bit of an edge when the time comes. You know, you got to be able to be fluid with the game. You know, if I had gone up there and still said, oh, well, I'm still going to try to hit the ball the other way, that changeup that he threw me, you know, kind of middle in, I probably would have fouled it off or, you know, popped it up or something, instead of trying to do damage and really get the head on that pitch because I felt like I knew what was coming. You know, the approach just kind of gives you I don't know, if you're convicted and disciplined in your approach, it's almost like you know what's coming, you know, like, because if it doesn't fit within your approach, then you're not going to swing. And, you know, even if it's a ball or a strike, it doesn't matter. That wasn't a part of your approach.
Right. So, the whole barrel control aspect, being able to drive the ball the other way and you know, hit behind runners and all that stuff part of the game, all the stuff, the strategies that will help, you know, you as the hitter to help team win games. It's not really appreciated, so much at the lower level. And that hurts guys as they kind of develop into, the game's a little different now. I mean, what's your thought on all this? You know, the not making adjustments and you know, basically not hitting, just swinging.
You know, I think, I don't know, I was talking about this because, you know, I'm living in Colorado right now, and a lot of the kids that I see are a product of the, you know, culture right now in baseball. And, you know, they come to me for lessons, and the first thing that I try to see is if they can hit a hard ground ball. You know, I want to see if the kid has the ability to hit the ball where they want to, because to me that lets me know if they can make an adjustment. You know, like some kids have a swing that's so grooved into, you know, whatever metric that they are chasing that, you know, they can hit one pitch or they can hit one location and it's always to, you know, the pull side. You know, and, you know, when they're 12 and in Colorado, ball doesn't break because of the elevation, and the ball goes an extra 30 feet because of elevation. So they're kind of setting themselves up for failure if they keep doing this, you know, this swing style, because one, they're getting a false sense of security because the pitches aren't breaking as much as they will when they go out of state, but they're also getting that false sense of security in that they're enjoying success, you know, facing these pitches that aren't breaking, and they're going a lot farther than they would if you weren't in Colorado. So the same thing can be said about the big leagues. You know, I think everyone kind of looked at the baseballs this year and saw that they were a bit juiced. What is that like? How does that affect the metrics and the data that we're plugging in? You know, like there's kids in, I don't know, in the Southern League that aren't hitting those juice balls, that are trying to, you know, adopt those swing mechanics, that they're not going to be rewarded because the ball doesn't go anywhere in the Southern League, and the pitches break in the Southern League. So I feel like it's a slippery slope that we're going down, because, you know, I feel like the game is trying to cater to the ADD fan that needs to have high scoring games and wants, you know, shortened games. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's just catering to the wrong fan. That's what baseball's doing right now.
Yeah. Well, very cool. So, you know, not to take up too much more of your time, but to kind of wrap some things up, talk a little bit about your blog. I read, you know, I know you just kind of really started publishing, and I like what I'm reading. So I think it's good Golson at WordPress.com for the people that are listening. Talk a little bit about what your plans are with that and the content that you're putting out, which I think is great.
Well, I mean, I've always enjoyed writing, and especially about baseball, when I feel like I wouldn't say that I don't know it all by any means, but having so much to draw from and write about, I feel like so much of baseball instruction and coaching these days is geared towards, this is the way you got to do it. This is the right way. And, if you don't, you're an idiot. And that's the way it's being pushed right now. And kids feel like they have to do stuff. They feel like they have to do it. And, I just kind of want to be that voice that says, it's your career. If you want to pitch like Mitch Williams did, it's obvious that he was successful doing it. There's different ways to be successful in this game. And, I feel like in my experience, cause I played with 8 different, organizations,
right.
I've made a lot of connections and seen a lot of different variety. I've probably had hundreds of hitting coaches at this point, if not, dozens.
Yeah.
So, and every single one of them had a different philosophy. So, and they all had varying degrees of success with that velocity. So to me, that just showed me that, there is no correct way. Every organization I went to, they said, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to hit, or this is how we're going to, run the bases. This is how you need to feel the do or die in the outfield. Like all these things, I go to a different organization and they just change me. And it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm an individual.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, whoever it is that you had success teaching this to, cater to me. And then maybe we can both come to an agreement on what needs to happen for me as a player. And then we can both benefit from it, but I think I'm just trying to just be a voice, another voice that isn't, falling in line with the groupthink that, all sports tend to do. All sports are kind of copycat leagues.
Right.
So, once everyone is adjusted to what's going on now, then speed will get back into the game. And whoever is the speed team is going to be the outlier that everybody tries to copy, So I just feel like baseball, it's always, ebbed and flowed in a way that made everyone that was at the cusp of all the innovation think that, oh, this is the way baseball is going to be forever. But I think we are seeing more and more that, regardless of what changes in the game, more changes will come. Like the robo umpire, we played with the robo umps in the Atlantic League this year, and they're talking about doing that in the big leagues, and everyone's calling for it, saying it's great, but I don't think they understand the unintended consequences that happen when you take out, human umpires.
Right.
It's just the game's going to change again when that happens, because if pitchers don't have to throw certain pitches, they're not going to throw them.
Yeah.
The game is going to get back to the big looping breaking ball, because that gets more of the zone at a harder angle to hit. But it was never called with the human umpires, but with the robo umpires, that catches the very bottom millimeter of the front edge of the plate of the zone. So it's an unhittable pitch that is probably going to bounce, before the catcher catches it, but it's in the strike zone.
Yeah.
So the game is going to change. I just feel like we can't go so gung-ho and feel like, oh, this is the way that it's going to be forever.
Right. What your you have a lot of resources, people that you talk to, that you can rely on for and their experience and on. What are some resources that, the everyday person, the everyday coach that's listening to this, or a parent or whoever, their favorite book, or what are some of your favorite resources?
Within baseball?
Yeah, it could be whatever.
Honestly, a book that I got into reading probably, I hated reading in high school because I felt like the assigned reading was just so boring, and
Yeah.
I felt like anything that if someone assigned me to do something, I didn't want to do it. But I ended up reading all of the books that I was assigned in high school, and I, liked some of them. I hated some of them, but a couple books that I really, really felt like helped me to, mature was, one was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And then the other one was The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita. And, they both kind of are somewhat self-help, but just especially the Way of the Superior Man, that one kind of just, it had a way of, sometimes you'll read a book and it's like, it sticks with you during the day, not because, I don't know, maybe it wasn't necessarily the most eloquently put, but, there's a certain level of truth to it that you see so clear that you hadn't been aware of before, and that was a David Dita book. It just kind of, I don't know, I guess it kind of showcased or things into categories and perspectives that I hadn't ever. But the Think and Grow Rich, that's kind of where I got that, look yourself, step into that reality.
Yeah.
Because it kind of, I'm not saying it's a law of attraction or a power of positive thinking, but, there is something to a clubhouse when, there's one person in there that's forever positive. I watched a video of Russell Wilson, hyping up his team, just being a source of positivity no matter what, you know what I mean? Yeah. And to me, that's like, you make your own reality when you do that. You're just forever positive, looking for the silver lining, and it's like, you'll find it at some point.
Yeah, no, I love that. I've read both those books, and I'd recommend them as well. So those good choices there. So one last question. If you were me interviewing yourself, what would you have asked that I didn't ask?
I think I would have asked that's a good question. Probably, what do you do outside of baseball to enjoy your time? And this was a a shameless plug of my fantasy football dominance.
There you go. There you go.
There you go.
Well, Greg, learned a lot here. I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy it as well. I really appreciate your time. Keep that blog going. I think it's great what you're doing over there.
I appreciate it. Thanks.